Hello and welcome to the BigFix Briefing Room. It's August 2025 and your hosts today are me, Michelle McGough, and I'm here with Mr. Joe Saylor. We're going to start out with a Microsoft Patch Tuesday overview. Joe's picked out a couple of CVEs he wants to cover around some graphics. We're going to talk about what's going on with .NET patches, and then there's an update about BigFix security releases. So Joe, you want to kick us off with the Patch Tuesday overview?
Yeah, of course. So by the numbers this month, we've got 107 total vulnerabilities. That's kind of an average number, nothing particularly out of the ordinary there. We just have one 0-day this month, but I do have some recommended acceleration of patching for Outlook, and you should take a closer look at your dMSA accounts, which we will talk about shortly here.
What is a dMSA account?
Yeah, so for our only 0-day for this month, it affects a new feature in Windows 2025. It's a delegated managed service account. And the intent behind these accounts is to get rid of passwords on all of your service accounts. So today, or maybe yesterday, a service account was just a password, and you can't really multi-factor it because it's just a machine logging into it. So there are these really high-powered accounts that are only protected by a password. The new delegated managed service account ties those to a machine account. So the actual physical hardware that's running whatever your operating system is, whatever system has been added to the dMSA group in Active Directory. And then it gets rid of the password entirely. So we just have tokens and no longer have that exposure point of having a password.
Okay, but it looks like they can be, so how does a dMSA account get compromised? I mean, it says here an attacker that has a compromised dMSA account can elevate that. It's passwordless, so how can somebody?
Great question. That's why it's a 7 and not something like way scarier here, because the actual compromise, if somebody does manage to exploit this, is an elevation to domain administrator, which is bad. You don't want that. Don't want an attacker to have domain admin on your account, on your Active Directory accounts. So the actual compromise, super bad, but it's very difficult to compromise that machine account. If an attacker is in your network and on a box and has remote code execution for one of these high-powered service account boxes, something bad has already happened, right? Like that's not, okay. The escalation there isn't too bad. I am much more concerned about the creation of these dMSA accounts, because that's where you as an organization kind of control how well the security works. So for an existing dMSA account, not super concerning, right? The compromising those is hard and just not very likely. But if you have a group that, say, a low privileged administrator can add members to, then an attacker can compromise that account.
Okay.
That account may not be very highly privileged to begin with, but all they have to be able to do is add one of their boxes to a dMSA group, and then they can escalate to domain admin from there. So to me, that's the real danger of this vulnerability. It makes compromising low-level accounts way more dangerous than they should be.
Okay, and then given the difficulty of being able to access or compromise one of those accounts, do you feel like a 7.2 is pretty accurate in terms of severity?
Yeah, just because of how difficult it is, yeah, for sure. I think the severity is okay. There's no exploits out in the wild for this just yet. There's no evidence of compromise using this. So we aren't in too much of a race. But again, just the hygiene on controlling access to who can create dMSA accounts is the most important thing. Organizations following, a zero trust kind of model probably already do this, but just make sure that you have, very minimal access to creating these service accounts, because that's the only thing that can really be dangerous here.
Okay, I have another question. My understanding with the 0-day is that there is remote code execution in the wild. Hasn't that always been sort of part of the definition? But in this case, we've got 1 0-day from Microsoft, and there is no remote code execution in the wild. that we know of yet?
Yeah, so that's kind of a conflation of active exploitation. So that would be like the known exploited vulnerabilities list, the
Okay.
sysexdev list. So those are ones that are all
Already
have an
exploited.
active exploit, right? They have known code out in the wild that is currently taking advantage of this. A 0-day just means that there was disclosure of the vulnerability without a patch being available.
Okay.
So that means that attackers have a head start on you, right? Like that's the danger of the 0-day. Like an attacker could have been developing code against this earlier than right now, than when the patch was available.
So then there's no patch for this. There's just mitigation, or there
There
isn't?
Yes, there is a patch today. When it was disclosed, there was no patch.
Okay. Thanks, Joe.
All right, moving on to just regular old criticals here. This begins kind of a cascade of graphics glitches this month. This one is particularly strange because it's just when Windows tries to look at a JPEG file, just anytime. And think of how often you load images, right? Like that's a web page, that's just everything. We're looking at images all the time. And there is an issue in the graphics driver that allows an attacker to craft a JPEG file and just run whatever they want on your box.
Ouch. And that's it. Well, okay. Yeah. It's a 9.8 and there's remote code execution. So these images are out there. More malicious images. Okay.
Yeah. And, I didn't explicitly call out kind of patch acceleration for this one because this affects all boxes, right? Like this is all user boxes. We don't really care about servers in this case because on a server, you're not typically like opening stuff.
Right.
My only like kind of fulcrum here for the decision point is this is everywhere, right? So you can't just target individual boxes to patch them ahead of time, patch them faster than, maybe your process allows. It has to be everything in order to cover it. And then now you have to weigh introducing the risk of patching everybody earlier and all of the communication and stuff that entails with the risk of the exploitation here. So if you're especially risk averse, I think patching all of your client boxes makes sense faster if you can manage it. But there's still that risk to consider of patching too quickly and too aggressively, maybe running into other problems because of that.
Okay. Yep, it's all part of the job.
Yeah.
You said there were more, so there are more image related.
Yeah. So I always see this with just groups of vulnerabilities. It seems like somebody finds a vulnerability in a single thing, one specific type, like the URL redirects that we saw just a whole spate of a couple of months ago, and then security researchers just hammer on that one thing. And I think that's kind of what happened here. So, we saw the really dangerous graphics driver update for decoding JPEGs, and then, people just hammered on the graphics driver. And that's what happened here. There's another graphics device interface plus GDI plus vulnerability. This one isn't quite as bad because it actually requires a user to view the metadata of an image, which sounds easier to exploit, but kind of paradoxically, it's harder because you actually have to open it to see the metadata. Like just opening a web page and viewing the JPEG doesn't necessarily get to, like, it doesn't care about the metadata, it just cares about the image. So in this particular one, it requires a user to actually open the file.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about solutions that say ingest metadata about files, like file integrity monitoring? Would that also impact that, or do you really have to like intentionally launch that photo into like a photo viewer of some type in order to? And I don't know if you know the answer to this, but it makes me curious. As soon as you said the metadata, I was like, oh, I wonder if there's another thing that could sort of.
You're totally on the right track. So yeah, as a user, you would kind of have to double click a file. I think even maybe right click properties would kind of get you there as well. But the dangerous part about your line of thinking is that web servers ingest these files. And so a web server that is vulnerable to this,
Sure.
an attacker could,
Yeah.
if there is a point in your web server where you're allowed to upload a file, then an attacker could maybe upload a malicious JPEG and achieve remote code execution if your web server ingested in, just the wrong way.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, okay. Yeah, that opens up a whole different can of worms. So yeah, close this vulnerability. This one doesn't specifically call out Windows 11 or 2025. So I'm assuming this has more broad applicability.
Correct. Yes, this applies to pretty much all Windows operating systems.
Okay. All right. Are there any more graphics? Okay.
Yeah, no more graphic stuff. Our good friend Remote Desktop is back. Slightly different component. This is not the gateway component this time that negotiates your connection to a remote desktop box. This is the actual terminal service server that's vulnerable. Same deal with kind of all of the other remote desktop server vulnerabilities. Check to see where it's running. It's not installed by default on servers, of course. So we've provided a little bit of relevance here to see if you even have this running anywhere in your environment. And then, maybe target patching those servers first. It's only, and, I say that somewhat sarcastically, but it's only a credential spoof, meaning that an attacker, if they take advantage of this, could use the credentials on your remote desktop server to do other stuff. Not quite as bad as remote code execution, but it still has significant impact.
Yeah, and remote desktop is not enabled by default, so you should know if you've enabled it. But I like what you have here is just to have folks look for the existence of the running service.
Yeah.
To get an idea of the scope. Okay. Awesome. What's next?
Next is our good friend Microsoft Message Queuing. We had a vulnerability on this earlier this year as well, so if it sounds familiar, that's where it came from. So the vulnerability here is remote code execution. So obviously the magnitude of impact is pretty high. It does require an attacker to win a race condition, meaning they have to just absolutely spam your message queuing target with just a bunch of requests to take advantage of this. So they have to be pretty persistent. It's not like, you have an MSM queue box online and it just gets instantly taken down. Go ahead.
Oh, well, what's got me thinking is, yeah, it's probably not going to be a person there just constantly spamming the queue, but that's something a bot could do really well. But it would have to be really a target, or more likely it would be a targeted attack.
Yeah, one of the advantages of having, advantage is a terrible word to use, but one of the upsides of having to satisfy a race condition here is that it's very difficult to blanket a whole population of boxes with enough traffic to break the race condition. So it has to be kind of targeted. They have to know where you have MSMQ enabled. So it's just not as straightforward to take advantage of.
Okay. And then we're looking for that running service anyway, so we can identify where the risk is located. So yeah, that's great. I like that you included that.
Yeah, and MSMQ is even maybe less likely to be installed than remote desktop is, or terminal services. It's typically found on some server admins might use it to automate stuff on their server boxes. It's almost never installed on workstations.
Got it. Okay. All right. Not the worst month so far. Poor Office.
I know.
All right, let's hear it.
It's the same. I don't even update this slide anymore. I changed the icon a little bit. Yeah, 4 more remote code execution exploits targeting Office documents. They're all a little different, but they're all the same. It's all just vulnerabilities in how Office reads these documents, and a malicious one will allow an attacker to do whatever they want on your system.
So spreadsheet, doc, PowerPoint, any kind of document from Office.
Yeah, for the most part. And then, of course, the dangerous part about these is that the preview pane is an attack vector. So
yeah, If anybody still has that enabled with on-prem Outlook, I would be shocked. Or
Yeah.
maybe they like to live dangerously. Yeah. Boy, okay. All right. Well, yeah, we've seen something like this for a few months in a row now, like you said.
Yeah, seems like forever.
And, well, nobody's shocked anymore, and there are 4 of them. Okay. All right.
That's it for our vulnerabilities this month.
All right. Well, I think the story of the month is my story.
It is.
It's my story. I got so many requests or questions in the past couple of months about where are the .NET patches. You know, Michelle, I haven't seen any .NET framework or core patches from you guys since January. Why aren't you publishing them? Or why isn't Microsoft, you know, publishing patches? They are. Here's the thing. There are no new CVEs. So security researchers haven't pointed out any new CVEs. So Microsoft is still releasing content, but because there's no associated CVE, they're just KBs. I have read through some of the release notes on those KBs, though, and some of those KBs contain what I would consider security updates. You know, they're closing vulnerabilities in some of that content. But again, because there's no associated CVE, it can't be published as a security patch. So it's just a KB. What that means for our BigFix customers when you're going in to look for patch content for .NET, don't filter it for security patches. Go into all content and then filter for .NET, and you will find all of the .NET Framework and .NET Core patches. And I strongly recommend still applying those patches despite them not having associated CVEs. And you could do that off cycle. They probably technically don't count as patches, but depending on the definition of what you offer to your business around vulnerability work, I strongly, strongly consider you go look at the .NET Framework and .NET Core content and validate whether you need to deploy it. I'm all for deploying it. That's my vote. What are you advising your customers to do, Joe?
Yeah, for sure, deploy everything. The latest .NET patch that exists that was a KBE that was security adjacent had something like it fixed a crash is basically what it was. There was a null pointer issue and it would crash .NET Framework, which I think a lot of the times does get called a CVE, right? Like that's denial of service. That's kind of a vulnerability thing. So yeah, little sus that Microsoft didn't release that as a security update. What I think is more interesting here is that this is like a hilarious indictment of the security posture of Microsoft in general. Like that it is wild that we have not seen a security patch for .NET in 8 months. Yeah, January was the last one, so we're 8 months in. And side note, we are 8 months into this year. That's illegal. Someone needs to take the passage of time.
Not illegal.
It is completely illegal. Someone needs to take the passage of time, arrest it, throw it in jail. I'm not okay with it.
We're not using. We don't. He doesn't actually mean. That's just how Joe talks. He doesn't actually mean illegal. That's just how he talks. But yeah, it's not. It's a little bit. I think the way that I look at it is this: if organizations define their vulnerability work based on responding to CVEs, they are missing this work, right? And they are vulnerable. So I don't know if I want to use the word sus, but it is a little bit odd that there haven't been any new CVEs. But there are patches, so go apply them, please. I don't think it's like a 9.8 severity situation. You don't have to hit pause and go do it right now, but you should try to work them into this month and consider just adding .NET if you've got it in your environment. Consider adding it to your monthly patch efforts anyway, whether there's a CVE or not. I don't think it's worth the risk of waiting to respond to a CVE.
And if you're like my customers and have .NET Framework patches pulled out as a separate policy in patch policies, don't panic when there weren't any patches applied, because there just kind of weren't any.
Yes, that's right. Patch policy, if I'm understanding correctly, only works with security patches. as far as I know. I don't think it works with third-party app patches. It has to have a CV. It has to be a security patch. That is something that we are looking at, though. So for our customers who've been wanting to have patch policy, to have that functionality outside of security patches, that is something that product is looking at, and I wouldn't be surprised if we went ahead and fulfilled those requests. But at this point, there's nothing committed. We're still talking about it. So yeah, .NET, go do it. That was really, there weren't really a lot of exciting stories this month. So you did the best you could, Joe. Same here. They're just,
we just got a wild anecdote. That's all we got. It's fine.
Yeah. So security releases for version 10. Looks like you picked them out.
Yeah, so not a lot of super exciting brand new functionality this month, but we, as a security video here, I figured it's relevant to talk about some of the security updates that we've been releasing this last month. We have a new update for BigFix Remote Control, FixPack 3. We've beefed up the default cryptography from 128-bit to 256-bit. So, for any default configurations out there, they're now much harder to break. Closed a couple of CVEs in remote control. And then in BigFix 10 patch 14, we have updated a couple of libraries as well to stay all the way up to the latest security standards.
Yeah. So what about for folks that are on BigFix 11? Should they have any concerns here?
No, so the major version of the libraries in BigFix 11 versus BigFix 10 are kind of dramatically different. That was one of the really big things in BigFix 11. For instance, OpenSSL in BigFix 11 is on major version 3. So we're using OpenSSL 3, and the OpenSSL 1 extended maintenance updates are not directly one-to-one with OpenSSL 3 updates. Okay. And so they do not happen at the same time.
All right. Well, so as months go, what would you call this month, Joe?
Yeah, I mean it's kind of a waffly one for me. Yeah, there isn't something very, very clear that you need to patch right this second, but it has a couple of really potentially nasty ones that will be hanging out in the back of my mind for sure.
Cool. Well, all right. Thanks for all the effort, Joe. It's great having you again. For those of you still with us, thanks for joining, and we'll see you again next month.